Hello and welcome back. My name is Colton from Ankeny Van Builds, and today I'm going to show you how I installed this bed lift inside of this van so it can go from about 33 inches off the ground all the way up to close to 45 inches. This is to allow the customer whose van this is to throw his bikes in without having to take the wheels off of the bikes itself. So he wanted something that could lift up, but he also didn't want it to be hiked up all the time. So I came up with this bed lift system off of other ideas I saw from other channels, but I'm going to show you how I put it all together, and I'll provide all the links to the stuff that I used. But let's go ahead and start this week's video. Alright, so I talked about how I wired it in my pre-wiring video, and I'm not 100% done yet. Obviously I'm going to clean all this up so it doesn't look just loose. I just finished installing all this stuff today, but basically just got the positive and the negatives all wired in together. It goes into my fuse block over there, but they're all wired together. So each actuator came with this, with the positive and the negative. I just use these clips right here to get the connection there. I'll tape it all up so that it looks a lot cleaner. So I started with this frame right here, so that way when the bed's all the way down, it can use this to support the weight, even though it does say that each of these actuators can hold 140 pounds each. So even though that these probably would be strong enough, I still want this just so it doesn't wear and tear on these actuators, and it's a lot more stable that way. But as you can see, I used some 80/20 with some corner brackets to make the frame. I used a 1/2 inch sheet of plywood just to keep the frame sturdy, and then on top here I have the bed slats, so that way there's an air gap underneath, and then it provides some stability for when I put the mattress in. And then I'll have a piece that goes across kind of like this, just to clean it up, and that way you're not looking at the edges of the wood here. So then it'll look like one solid piece and should look really nice. And then on the underneath side, I didn't want these actuators to be pushing just up on the plywood and relying on the screws to hold the plywood in. So I got a 2x3 that spans all the way across, so that way it's even surface area pushing the bed all the way up. And I have this 2x4 screwed in from the outside in, so that way it's not just pushing straight up on that plywood. And so far it seems to be working great. And on the other side here, I have it attached directly to the 80/20. So I don't remember if this bracket here came with the actuators. If it didn't, I'll be sure to leave a link to it. But basically there's a hole on the bottom of this bracket that I used to screw into the 80/20. So that holds that in place, and then there's just this pin that secures the bracket to the actuator itself. And then to secure the actuators, I used these U-channel conduit, or whatever they're called. You can find them at Home Depot in the electrical aisle, but I just did 3 per actuator, so that way it doesn't move left or right. And because I have 2 2x4s squeezed up there, I used 3-inch nails to hold them in place. So to move this bed up and down, I have this 3-way reverse polarity rocker switch. And in fact, let me pull this out of the wall so I can show you how I wired it, because I initially did it wrong. Okay, so in order to get this to work, in the middle here you have the battery positive and the battery negative going into the 2 middle prongs. And then you have where you can see 2 wires connect into 1 prong. You want to make sure those are at the bottom, and then you got to crisscross them to go to the other side. Initially I had, let's see if I can do this. Initially I had this wire on this side, and then vice versa, this wire on this side. And what that did is it allowed it to go one direction. It allowed it to go either up but not down, or down and not up. So in order to get this to work so that it's the reverse polarity, you have to crisscross those wires, which is something I learned. So that way if it's in the middle, nothing happens. When you click it down, it goes all the way down and stops once it's full down, or when you flip it up, it goes full up until it stops at the full up position. So then when you want it to go up, you Just flip it up. And it is fairly loud. Not too bad, but as loud as you'd expect. And it does go pretty slow. But all in all, these actuators will go up a total of 14 inches. And there it is all the way at the top. So this gives him plenty of room to bring his bikes in, stand them up so that he doesn't have to take the tires off each time. And it allows him to have more storage underneath his bed. What is also cool about this switch is if I bring it back down, you can stop it at any height and it'll stay wherever you last had it. So you can flip it and let it do its thing until it goes all the way down. And you don't have to sit and monitor it here at the Goal Zero. It uses little to no energy at all. And then that 12 watts is the lights that we have on right now. So if you want to kick it off, you can see it only uses about 30 to 40 watts. Not even, it only uses 28. And then a little bit less on the way down. So going over the dimensions of this bed, it's going to be kind of hard because I broke my tripod a little while ago. But you can see, if I can do this with one hand, we got 60 inches wide, which is going to be the width of the RV Queen mattress that I'm going to put on here. You can read that, it's going to be about 62 inches across. And when it's at its full down position, we're looking at about 34 1/4. And then when it's at its full up position, we have about 48.5 inch to the top and 45 3/4 to the bottom. So he needed a minimum of 44 inches for his bikes to fit in here. So that gives him a couple inches of wiggle room. And as far as the dimensions of this framework, I have about 51 3/4 for the width, and I just showed you 32 inches tall. The reason I didn't bring it all the way out here is because I had this trim piece in already, and it would have gotten in the way of the wires. So I framed it around the wheel well boxes, and then that also gives him a little bit more room in the back here to put some miscellaneous things, which I found on my van. I use this corner a lot when you're putting stuff in the back. So that gives him more room there. And this base, I painted it white so it blends in with the wall so you don't really notice it. And all in all, I'm actually pretty proud of how this turned out. It took a lot of time and effort for me to figure out all the dimensions and where I wanted things, but pretty stoked with how it turned out. So I do want to talk about these corner brackets here. I don't know if I'd really recommend using these specific ones. I've seen other channels use different kinds, and they seem to work a lot better than these ones. There's a little nut that slides back into this channel here, and to line that up with this bolt and these brackets took a lot of work, and there's a lot of fumbling around with it. So I think there probably could be a better solution than these specific ones, but I'm just showing you the ones that I used. Now, one more thing you do have to consider is that the walls of these vans curve in as they go up. So as you have these actuators that go up, you can see here it keeps rubbing against my flare space. So what I started working on today, and I'll have to continue more tomorrow, is I've been filing down this 80/20, and then I'm going to sand this flare space, the fiberglass, down just so there's a little bit of a cup, because it's just barely touching right here, but it's enough to scrape the paint off, and obviously we don't want that. So I got my measurement really close to fit, but I was fraction of an inch off. So unfortunately I have some sanding to do, but that's definitely something to consider. You can see this corner right here is also just barely rubbing against this piece of trim. So little things you got to look out for when planning yours. So I know that was super quick, down and dirty rundown of how I did it. If you like this style video with the no BS, no cinematic shots, no drone footage, no long intros, just straight to the point, let me know if I want to be competitive in this van building section of YouTube. There's plenty of people making content out there, so best way to help me out, leave a comment, doesn't matter what it is, like the video, and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. But other than that, I'm going to end this video here. I hope you found this video helpful, educational. But yeah, other than that, see you guys next week. Peace.